We're here with Doug Bogatz, Director of Instrumental Music at Omaha Westview High School. We just want to know a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you get into music? How did you get into music education? And, yeah.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I am the instrumental music director at Westview High School. We are
Hmm.
a brand new high school as of last year in the Omaha Public Schools.
Oh, cool.
So as far as band and orchestra goes, I'm the only guy so far, but hopefully that'll expand as the groups expand
Wow.
in the coming years. And as you also mentioned, I was honored by the membership of the Nebraska Music Education Association to be voted into the Director of Auditions and Ensemble Affairs. It's a volunteer post, but one that I take very seriously.
Hmm.
I basically am in charge of facilitating the high school all-state ensembles and everything that kind of goes along with that.
Yeah.
Um, Mentioning like my background and everything else like that, I wasn't always like I teach both band and orchestra. I'll freely admit. My
Yeah.
students know, like I'm a band nerd through and through.
Yeah.
I've been teaching orchestra for a good chunk of my career, even before I opened this high school, and I
Uh-huh.
really do enjoy it. But I had maybe learned violin for a good 2 weeks before I realized that that wasn't necessarily a great fit for me back in sixth
Wow.
grade. But I joined the band, and I don't know, like middle school, it was just kind of something I did. And I don't know if I didn't enjoy it or just wasn't getting anything out of it. I know I wasn't putting
Hmm.
anything into it
Right.
to draw anything out of it. And so I more or less quit until my parents forced me to at least try it for 1 year in high school. And it was at that point that I was just hooked. I wasn't always going to be an educator. I actually was going to follow my mom's footsteps and be a journalist. And that was
Hmm.
pretty much until like the last semester of my senior year. Again, I don't know where this came from. It was just kind of a gut feeling, I guess. It just kind of felt like that wasn't going to be the right career path for me. You know, when I kind of came to that realization, the question of, well, what
Hmm.
else kind of crept into my brain. And I realized that I had always had a home in the band room, and there was a reason for that. It just wasn't magically happening.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of thought, well, I bet I could probably instill that in future students and whatever else, and that could be something that I could get a lot of fulfillment out of. And what really kind of cemented it for me, I was lucky enough to audition and make the what they call the Winter Winds. It's a
Okay.
honor band at the University of Nebraska Lincoln, and one of the cool things about the honor band there is you're a part of the band itself,
Yeah.
obviously, but you also do a combined piece with their wind ensemble, their top group, and you get placed into a chamber ensemble.
Hmm.
In my case, it was a saxophone quartet,
Okay.
and you get a lot of one-on-one time with a lot of faculty. And I had always kind of figured that that was going to be a good home for me, UNL, no matter what I studied. But that was
Yeah.
definitely a spot, like an experience where when I came out of it, I was just like, no, I'm definitely doing that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And which is part of the reason why it exists. It hooked me. So
So did you do, were you in the marching band in Nebraska?
yes, I was.
Okay, that's gonna be fun.
Oh yeah, it was a very great time. Both my wife Lindsay and I were members of the Cornhusker Marching Band.
Yeah.
I was a drum major my senior year. She was a drum major the year after that, her senior
Wow.
year. We both
Y'all were,
met in the Cornhusker Marching Band. So yeah, like I
yeah.
said, band nerd through and through. I was there for every single loss, home and away, in the 2007 season from the beginning to the end. And,
Wow.
my colleagues in the Cornerstone Marching Band and I honestly, and of course, like cheerleaders, dance team, I can't think of anyone else besides people that were directly involved with the game that can claim
Yeah.
that. UNL, we have a marching band tradition that goes way back to the mid 1800s. The marching band
Whoa.
is actually older than the football team. If the ROTC band roots and whatever else. So like,
Okay.
among the Ohio States, and that the tradition is insane.
So
So
how do you get
yeah.
into that? Do you have to audition to be in the marching band?
Yes, you do. They have a whole, and again, things may have changed since I've been there, but basically, you have a pre-audition, which I was auditioning for the School of Music, so that counted as my pre-audition for
Right.
the marching band as well. And then they have the 2 or 3 days before band camp for the entire band that leadership and new members come in, and yeah, there's a whole audition process. You
Yeah.
play, you march. They also, of course, bake in your attitude and work ethic throughout those 3 days. And then there's that nervous evening where you're waiting for the lists to be posted. They post them and they have their very first rehearsal right there, that
Oh, really?
15 minutes later. They've always had that first audition after the rosters are announced. Sorry, the first rehearsal after the rosters are announced.
Drum Corps International, you were part of that too.
I was.
Yeah,
I
what
was a
corps?
I was in I was in the baritone section for the Colts Drum and Bugle Corps in
Okay.
2006 and 2007, and then I was a drum major in my age out year in 2008.
If anybody hasn't watched the drum, go to YouTube and watch some of these drum and bugle corps. What are the big ones? Blue Knights, the Phantom Regiment. Those are
Yep.
the ones that always they have, and then so they have you do tour this summer
Yep.
to different football stadiums around the country, and then you have a final competition, right?
Yep.
And Indian, it's always in Indianapolis. Is that right?
That
Yeah.
one's always in Indianapolis.
And it's,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, the
No,
production
it's
value
a
is
full on
so
stage
high.
production on a football field.
I know it
That's
is.
the best way to describe it nowadays.
I mean, and somebody turned me on to the Japanese version where they have this square. It's like a
Yep.
square, and then I'm like, what is going on here? So it's amazing what people are doing out there that you just don't know about unless you're in it. But what's the audition like for that? Traditionally for those drum and bugle corps.
Depending on like which corps that you're auditioning for. I actually have a
Yeah,
student at this school that is going to be auditioning for the Colts.
yeah,
So I've kind of dived back into that world. And the way that the Colts did it back then, what you're vying for is a contract, basically an agreement
okay,
saying, hey, we'll reserve a spot for you if you're going to fulfill your financial obligations and be with us and all these other things. They would offer you a contract if you attend 2 camps, or they would tell you that it's not going to be this year. But the thing that's different about drum and bugle corps is even if you're cut, I put that in
mm,
quotes, you could still go to the camps.
mm.
Sometimes spots open up.
So you had to go. So you would go like every other month. They had like a
every
weekend
every month starting in like
every month.
November.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
could anybody just show up to that? I mean,
Pretty much. I
you
mean,
had
you
to play
pay the camp
something.
fee. Yeah, you pay the camp fee. You come
Yeah.
with you understand that you are going to be doing a lot of athletic activity, and they have a certain like you're going to be eating the food that they serve you, that sort of thing. But
It's the
yeah, you
military.
you you sign
Yeah.
up, you pay your fees, you show up, and they'll teach you.
So you do
And this is
that, and
something
then
that
yeah,
I also recommend to anybody that's ever interested in that, young people in particular. Most people will eliminate their possibility of like making a core that they really want to make by just, not going. It's like, well, I'm never going to be good
hmm
enough, or they freak themselves out or whatever else. And my advice is always just like, look, even if you're not looking to march this year, but you want to march at
yeah,
some point, just go. Like, get the experience. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that you
yeah,
have no clue about what's going on. And it's kind of like a college visit, really. You don't know until you're there, kind of, if
hmm
it's the right fit for you. The Colts weren't the only drum corps that I went to a camp for.
right,
But when I went there, it was very clear that it was going to be the right place for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed my 3 years there as a result.
yeah. So it sounds like my daughter's doing. She's in ninth grade, and she one of my daughters, and she's been doing musical theater and doing some auditions for that, and it sounds similar to that in terms of like you're she might go to audition and then she like does stuff with other people and then they like okay do this acting thing or do dancing or in other words like they're trying to see how you work with others and other kind of things. But then I also think of like if a team, a professional sports team, wants to draft or sign a player or whatever, they'll have them like come in and practice, and
Yep.
then just see. So sometimes auditions aren't always just these formal auditions. Sometimes it's more of a process of working with
That's
people. And
exactly right.
yeah,
And, for good or ill, I mean, we just wrapped up our color guard auditions here.
yeah,
That by and large is kind of what I'm doing. It's like there's an audition itself that you're preparing. That's important, obviously. But really we're observing like how you work. And there have been the off times that like somebody has a really great audition, but we know that they have a very poor attitude, and that knocks them down a peg or two. And the opposite's also true. Like they could clearly have some growing to do, but if they've been showing up on time, they've been giving it their all, they have a good attitude. You can teach that.
you have all this going on. I talk to a lot of directors, and I always like to ask them like, what place do assessments and auditions and stuff have like in your program, or some of them, some people are just so overwhelmed they have very little time to do any auditions or anything like that or placement. Like, what do you have time to do?
Yes, that is a big thing with me.
Mm,
Kind of go into the time thing. Uh, I don't want the student experience to be simply you come in, you sit in the same chair, play three pieces of music, and that's like your entire role. I really
mm,
do try to give the students a lot of experiences and opportunities to be more of an individual. That comes down to like preparing a solo or a small ensemble or two throughout a school year. Everybody, not just, your top players, but every student to
oh
have
yeah,
that sort of experience. And yeah, I have been doing chair placement auditions in both the band and the orchestra, not necessarily so that they know where they are in the pecking order. I don't believe that that's in their best interest this early
yeah,
on in the
yeah,
program. I'll label principal players. So
right,
like the
a
students know
leader,
that this is our concert master, this is the principal violist.
right,
That I feel that that's important. If for anything else, so that you have like, for lack of better terms, a section leader.
right,
Because
right,
I do also love giving the students time to work on whatever they feel they need to work on for performances, for small ensembles, what have you. And having like a de facto leader helps because then there's too many, without it, there's too many, chefs in the kitchen and nothing gets done. But on the orchestra side, one thing that's baked into that culture that I really love is collaboration. In band, you have your specific folder. By and large, everybody is expected to have their own music stand and their own music. You have your seat, your task, and it works really well for that art form. In
right,
orchestra, the tradition is more you have a stand partner.
right,
And the reason that they sit in wedges is because, you're constantly looking forward and matching the bowings and the style of your principal player. So it's a lot more collaborative and communicative that way. And so when I'm placing, based off of the auditions that I give them, when I'm placing them in my ensemble, I don't think necessarily as much, all right, what chair are they? Like, what rank are they? But more, who would they work well with? And so the next step is kind of figuring out like who their partners could be. And sometimes it's obvious,
hmm
a really good friend, a sibling that they get along with.
that they get along
Uh,
with.
yeah, and
Yeah,
sometimes they like just gravitate to one another, right?
yeah,
And if it's not intrusive, right? If they're not going to like distract one another and actually, accomplish things together, I'm very open and flexible to that because
yeah,
ultimately that would put them in the best place to succeed, or at least it seems that way. And sometimes, for them, it's kind of a surprise. They maybe don't know the person particularly well or didn't think that, they would work well another. But again, this is why, I assess. And over the years, I feel like I've developed a keen sense of, no, you guys would really work well together. And I mean, I'll knock on wood, I really haven't run into any situations where I've
right.
had to change that drastically.
So do you
I'll put it
have
that
a
way.
a process where where they do come in and play for you, or how do you do this assessment?
Again, because of time, a
Yeah.
lot of my playing assessments are video.
Okay.
Um,
Right.
We use Canvas in
Oh
the
yeah,
Omaha
the
Public
LMS
Schools.
system. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
the LMS system. And
Right.
it's really, really easy to have regular playing tests that they submit to me.
Okay. So it's like
Uh,
an assignment. They record
yes.
the video,
Yep.
and it's right on there, and you can just go
Yep.
through
I
them.
just go right through. I can score it right
Right.
there. Yeah. It's
That's
super
great.
easy and convenient to do. And again, it just comes down to time right now.
Right.
I think ideally, yeah, it would be great to have a system set up to where maybe I have additional staff and they can do in person whatever else like that. That would be the ideal
Probably never
situation.
gonna
But
happen. No.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like even if you have like just let's say a major scale that they're going to play for you, if you're listening to each individual, that's pretty much a class period right there.
Oh no, in the video
If
you can
not
just
if not
go.
two.
Yeah, and video you can just go one after the other, and
Exactly.
yeah, it's more.
Exactly.
It's just utilize the technology. The last thing I like to ask you about is your, the all-state thing you're coordinating,
Yep.
and just what you've learned from that as far as judging, coordinating. Okay.
Our all-state ensembles, we don't have a district level or pre-state
Okay.
thing. It's a one-shot deal for our state. The music was just released not too long ago, and the auditions themselves are going to occur near the end of September. And we have four ensembles that we offer. We have an all-state concert band, chorus,
Mm-hmm.
orchestra, and jazz band.
Mm.
And students are able and allowed to audition for all four if they wish. But of course, they will be placed into one if they
Because they have
make
at that same time the group.
exactly. They all
Okay.
happen during our conference, which occurs a week before Thanksgiving. And like I said, I was elected into this position. I've learned a lot. We have approximately 2,600 auditions coming in.
Mm.
We go out of state for all of our judges. It's very important to us
Oh
that,
really?
there's no like conflict of
Oh
interest.
wow.
It's all
Yeah.
online, I should mention, but there's no conflict of interest or possibility for bias
Okay.
when it comes to the selection process. Some of those judges, I mean, I'm very upfront
Mm-hmm.
with what the expectation is, and we do pay them, but I'm not going to say it's the most lucrative
Yeah,
thing in the
I
world.
don't
I
think it
mean,
ever
we're
would be.
we're
Yeah.
yeah, we're a
Yeah.
nonprofit organization, of
Right.
teachers. There's only so much we can do, but God bless them. They're able to do the job and do it well. I'm thinking particularly like there's certain voice type judges that have over 300 auditions to comb through. And
That's
I don't
yeah.
I don't put any sort of pressure on them in terms of like you need to select the X amount of voices that we're gonna include or whatever else. We have a very specific rubric that we send them.
Oh good. Yeah.
So their job is just raw numbers. It's just like give me sub scores for all of these. You don't even have to add it all up or rank it or whatever else. We'll do that on the back end. Just give us the raw numbers of what you hear. And it's not a perfect system. Nothing is. But we
So
feel
you
that it's
have
worked well for us.
so you have the judges for all the instruments and all the so
Yes,
all
we have
you
a
just
we have a separate
yeah
judge for every single like voice
every
type
right,
instrument. Yeah.
and then you give them a rubric, and the
Yes.
rubric is, and then you basically have them score. So
Yep.
if you're doing like second soprano vocal, do you have a lot of ties you have to work on?
The first thing that confuses judges when they see our rubric is that like the bottom line number is something like out of 1,400 or whatever. And
Oh, so you do
that's
have a lot of
oh yeah,
bandwidth.
we have
Yeah.
so like but the reason for that is, something that a lot of us can wrap our minds around like an 100-point scale and we say I don't know if this is 100% right. I don't have it in front of me, but like
Yeah.
if you're scoring a 90 or above, that's like exceptional. If you are a 70 to a 90, that's above average. Like we have raw numbers that goes
Okay.
to that. And for every subcategory that we have, they just score it out of 100 based off of that. And we tell them, try your best to make sure that you're not giving a lot of like 75s or whatever. Try to really use the entire gradient of the scale so that theoretically, when it gets to the overall
Hmm.
score, you shouldn't have too many bottom line ties. They still exist. It's with that many people, it's impossible to not, I think, but it happens so infrequently. And most of the time, vast majority of the time, if there is a bottom line score, it's usually a case where both students are in anyway. And we do, if they have like chair placements or whatever, they occur
Hmm.
at the event itself. So
Okay, that's good.
we're not saying that, the top flute score is the top, the
Yeah.
principal flutist for the concert band or whatever. They will have like we'll place them in sections like flute one and flute two. There's enough like discrepancy there, but they will do a chair placement audition when they come to our conference so that we can place them, right then and there. And it also shows their level of preparation. The secondary motive for that is to make sure that they're practicing their music
Practicing, I
before
remember
they,
doing that. Yeah,
yeah,
back in I remember in
because
high school I was like all state or all city, I don't know, something orchestra for trombone, and I and I got the music and it was like, oh, this is in tenor clef. Oh, I've never played that before. I guess I have to learn that now. But
well, kids get
and
busy, directors certainly
yeah,
get busy. If there's not some sort, I feel if there's not some sort of like extrinsic motivation, it's might get
yeah,
pushed to the side,
of
and
course,
again, that's nobody's fault. That's just human nature. So we feel that that's something that gives them extra motivation to, you don't know what part of the music we're going to listen for. So
so
practice
what?
the entire thing, and then we'll tell you when you're actually sitting down in front of us what we want to hear.
Yeah, yeah. So when we were
And
building Snap, the tie thing. Just going back to that, it was
yeah,
we of course we have this rubric builder, and we do all the calculations are on automatic. We were trying to figure out, well, how do we make sure that the person that's setting it up has a big enough span in their in their scoring, because you
right.
see that all the time. And then so I think we sent out a question to advisors. I think you were one of them, and said, how do you dealing with ties? And I was surprised to get some several admins back saying, well, I just figure I just pick one or something
Right.
like, well, hopefully you have a rubric scoring or
Yeah.
scoring methodology where you have enough decimal places where you don't have to do that. But yeah,
Or some sort of like ranking system to where like, we
yeah,
prefer like we're gonna weigh if it comes down to a tie, we're gonna weigh tone over, pitch accuracy or so I
yeah,
don't know. Like uh, that's something that, you would just need to decide as an organization what would be most
right.
important to you. Um I will say that for our all-state ensembles, and this is both being on the board and even like just as a member prior to being elected to the board, there is a reputation for our state for our kids being very prepared. I've taught out of state, and
Hmm.
I can tell you that that doesn't happen everywhere, right?
Really,
Well, I mean, just for what we were talking about before, like,
yeah,
sometimes it just gets pushed to the side until like you're actually there. And um, people that have been a guest clinician at multiple, states, and I'm not one of them. I've never been in that position, but
not
I've
yet.
talked
Yeah,
to enough
yeah,
people that have done it for a lot of
uh-huh.
like honor groups. There is a big difference between the ones that the students by and large prepare and where they
Hmm.
kind of have to kick them into gear when they get there.
Yeah. Then you have 2 days to do that before you have
Yeah.
to have a performance.
And it just makes
Yeah,
it such a more pleasant experience for
yeah,
everyone. And so again, since this is just the one shot that you have, like we really
yeah.
do try really hard to make sure that the students know it's very important that you prepare. It's very important that you take this seriously. And by and large, that has happened.
Sounds like you guys are really organized, and then you're trying to keep the students motivated
Oh,
on
and I
trombone.
almost forgot. So like the
Yeah.
choir people have it figured out when it comes to preparation because the
Okay.
audition is the performance music. So the first thing that we have the
Right.
clinician send to us is their repertoire list, and we have
Right.
a inclusion and diversity committee within our
Uh-huh.
board that the repertoires go through to make sure that we have a good mix of backgrounds and populations and generations within the composers that we're performing.
Really?
And
So
if
how would that not happen? I mean, I'm curious, was there a
uh,
time that everything was monolithic?
the concern being a legitimate one, I'll just speak
Yeah.
from like the band side.
Yeah.
We're not too far away from an era where literally every single composer that you hear are just old white dudes. Being well on my way to being old and being a white male,
Yeah.
that it's not as if like I'll put it this way. There's so many great musicians from so many different backgrounds and so many different areas that by and large have been ignored for a long time
Right.
that need to be represented. And this is just our way of making sure, and especially like we're talking about kids here, right? So like we want to make sure that they get exposed to everything that music has to offer out there. And so that's just our way of ensuring that whoever we're having coming in, the experience that they're giving is giving students opportunities to perform all kinds of different music from all kinds of different backgrounds and experiences.
That's cool.
That because that only enriches their experience.
Is there anything you've learned, doing this admin thing as far as the organization of it?
I really try to get my experiences, not have that be part of the equation when, the decision making is happening. Nebraska is not a huge state, but what we are is a very diverse state when it comes to like school size and population. I spent most of my life growing up in Omaha, which is the largest city in Nebraska, but a lot of students in this state don't have that experience, right? In some cases, they're graduating with a class of 10 or fewer. And so it was really easy for me when I was in high school to just like laser focus. I'm the band guy. I'm in the marching band, and then I'm playing saxophone in the concert band and in jazz band and doing these band competitions and performing preparing a solo for this, that, or the other.
That was your subgroup. That was your people.
That was my thing.
Because
right?
you had a big
And
enough school where you had
exactly
enough
that
people.
you could just have a thing. And so, I had my experience, but that's just like one microcosm that exists upon a wide spectrum of things that are out there.
So how does that play into the audition? Like you got some entrant that's out in a school with 50 people. What is
Well,
it?
it really just comes down to being willing to be flexible to the needs of the directors as they are going through this process. I mean, like it's a high pressure, stressful situation as it is, right?
Okay.
And my job is to ensure that there are enough, and I'm speaking to this like to the individual student, but like directors, of course, are doing everything as well. There are music teachers in our state where not an exaggeration, within like a 50 to 100-mile radius, they're the only music teacher. For me, I need to make sure that anything that I am sending out is very clear, is timely, very early, and I'm being willing and open to communication, feedback, questions, whatever, so that the inherent stresses of what the process is already is not on top of me being difficult for reasons X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, because I think what you're saying is that these people have maybe 100 things to prep for it, but they're little chunks, and you have 10 things in a bigger school, but there's more to it. And so the more they have so many things to organize that, and they're not hired to be an organizer, they're hired to be a music teacher.
Exactly.
So, but this is one of them.
That opens up a whole like wider conversation of education in general, but let's not open that can of worms.
Well, and this is one of the reasons I really wanted to start Snap Audition, the software too, was we could organize this a lot better because there's so many little details and things that have to happen, and then teachers have too much to do, and how do you just make it easier for them? Yeah, it's been great to hear from you and hear all about the different things, the DCI and the marching band, all the fun things you've been doing.